Hello everybody, welcome back. I've got a quick little video today. It's just an update for my Pan That Eyeshadow palette challenge that I've got going on this year. I want to completely use up this Modern Renaissance palette. It's actually a combination of Modern Renaissance and Norvina shades, and I want to completely use this one up this year. One, because I think it should be fairly easy to use up. Maybe not all shades. I think there will be a couple of shades that I won't be able to finish up, but most of them I should be able to. So that's number one, why I want to do this challenge, but also because I'm moving towards a much more minimal makeup routine, particularly when it comes to eyeshadow. I don't particularly like wearing eyeshadow. I don't think I'm that good at it. I think my makeup looks better on days like today where I don't really have any eyeshadow on, and I just want a makeup collection that's, like I say, very minimal. It's only comprised of makeup items that I really love, and having lots of eyeshadow palettes now just doesn't make sense for my own makeup preferences and collection. So in March I went on holiday for a couple of weeks and I didn't take this eyeshadow palette with me. So my numbers aren't great for March. My numbers are pretty low. There's not a single eyeshadow in this palette that I've used more than 9 times. So the numbers are pretty low. But saying that, I do have a complete empty in this palette. So let's go through the shades. I think I'm going to do a similar thing that I did last time, where I will just put up a picture of how the palette is looking today and how it looked the previous month or the previous months. But let's go from top row left to right, bottom row left to right. So the very first shade is Tempera, and this is my empty. This one took me 9 uses to completely use up the entire eyeshadow pan, and I finished it right at the start of this month, so the 4th of April I used that one up. This is very similar to what is called Base, but is in the Buon Fresco pan. This is a great neutral ivory shade, great for just to help to counter any discoloration on your eyelids, or to set an eyeshadow primer, or to be a base for other eyeshadows on the top. And this is the type of eyeshadow palette that I will wear 99% of the time when I wear makeup. So it's a really easy shade for me to get through and to use up. And I had no doubts that I wouldn't use this one up this year. So I'm glad that I've used this one up, and I can then focus on Base. The next eyeshadow palette I only use once. This is Golden Ochre. I find this one quite difficult to know how to wear, because this one could also be a great eyeshadow to set eyeshadow primer and be a base for other eyeshadows, but if I'm using shades like Tempera and Base for that, Golden Ochre doesn't really have much of a place when it comes to doing an eyeshadow look. So I need to find ways of using this. I sometimes use it to like tidy up the edges, so maybe that's what I should be doing every time I wear eyeshadow, but for now I only used it once. The shade next to it, Vermeer, I didn't use at all this month. This is quite a pinky shimmery colour, and I prefer the shimmers on the row below it, so definitely need to be using that one a little bit more frequently. The shade next to it is Base. This one I've used twice. I will be using this one considerably more often now that I've used up Tempera. Base will be my go-to eyeshadow to, like I say, set my eyeshadow primer and to be a base for all other eyeshadows over the top. And I've got a decent pan on Base, so Base should hopefully be an empty by the first half of the year. The shade next to it is called Incense. It's not Antique Bronze, it is Incense. I've got a good pan going on this one. This one I tend to run under the lower lash line, but I'll also add it into the crease as well. It's just a great warm mid-tone brown shade, but there's a couple of shades like this in the palette, so some shades sometimes I use a little bit more frequently than this one, but it is a great shade. The one next to it is Eccentric. This is a very warm orangey brown, so this one I tend to use if I'm wearing a lot more orangey colours in my clothes, for example. So with the top I'm wearing today, I would probably wear Eccentric with this top. It just adds much more warmth to my eyeshadow look. And I've got a pan in this one as well. I've got a line pan. This is one that I added into this palette, and when I moved it over it did take a little bit of a battering, so there's not much of this product left. The one next to it is called Cypress Umber. I used this one 7 times. This one also has a pan. I use an angled like eyeliner type of brush with this one, so that's why I've got a line pan. This one I put over the top of a brown eyeliner pencil to help set the pencil. I don't use this one as an actual eyeshadow because it's just too dark, and for that reason I don't think this one will be a complete empty by the end of the year. Okay, row number 2. So first shade on that row is Raw Sienna. This one I mixed with the shade next to it called Burnt Orange. I've used both of these 8 times. I mix these two together and run this through the crease as like a transition shade. Makes for a great warm mid-toned brown shade. These two should also be empties by halfway through the year, along with like a nude ivory shade. A mid-tone brown like this tends to be eyeshadow shades that I wear every time I wear eyeshadow, so it's a shade that I'm consistently working through, so I don't think either of those two will be a problem when it comes to completely using them up. The next shade to it, Primavera, this one should also be an empty by halfway through the year. This one is one of my go-to shades in this palette. I've used this one 7 times since the last check-in, and I've got a really big pan in it. This is a light, warm, golden, shimmery shade, and it's really, really beautiful. The one next to it is called Summer. I've only used this one twice, and that's because I tend to use Primavera over this one. So once I've used up Primavera, I'll probably use this one and also Vermeer and try and use both of those up. The next shade is called Dreamer. This is another one of my go-to shades. I use this one with Primavera. Dreamer is a very warm gold shade. This one is so beautiful. This is one of my favourite shades within the palette, and this one should also be an empty halfway throughout the year. Penultimate shade is called Warm Taupe. I've got a bit of a dip going on in this one now, which is good. I've used this one 7 times since the last check-in, and I tend to mix this one in with the shade above and to the left called Incense, and I run this one under my lower lash line. So I'm trying to use most of the shadows in this palette every time I wear makeup, so I'm trying to mix in some of them together to help with that. I can also use this shade as a powder contour, but I tend to forget, to be honest, so I need to remember to do that, and that will obviously help me work through it a little bit more quickly. And then the last shade is called Railgar. This is the shade that has the most product in here, I would say. I've used this one twice. This is a very warm orangey red shade, so this one would also go quite nicely with the top I've got on today. It's not one of my go-to shades, but it is a lovely one, which is why I've kept this one in the palette. So like I say, numbers aren't too high this month, but that's because I went on holiday for a couple of weeks and didn't really want to be taking a full eyeshadow palette with me. So now that I'm back, hopefully the numbers are going to be a lot higher for the next check-in. But saying that, I did still finish up an eyeshadow though. I finished up Tempera, so that's 1 out of 14 that I've used up. And if I can be really consistent and get decent numbers in terms of usage for this palette, there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eyeshadows that I should use up by halfway through the year. So I think that's going to be my next goal. I think I'm going to focus on these 5, get them used up. Those 5 are Base, so that matte ivory shade. These 2 shades here, so Raw Sienna and Burnt Orange, they are my crease shades. Also Primavera and then Dreamer. So these 2 I wear together, and there's not too much of those left. I've got really good pans in all 5 of those shades. So April, May, June, 3 more months of usage of those. Hopefully those will be empties by halfway through the year. So fingers crossed, things are looking good with this palette, but if you liked it, please do give it a thumbs up. I do also have my Project Pan video up as well. That was the one before this video. I do also have some regular videos coming up soon, so my makeup inventory check-in to see how we're looking for the first quarter of the year. I've also got Q1 makeup purchases check-in as well to see if I've been on track with my replacement only no buy, and then I also have things like my wardrobe update video coming up as well. So thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you again soon for those videos. Bye!